So as you can tell, I'm at the latter stage of my career. In fact, I'm pretty much retired. So right now it's very easy to balance career and family because my children are out of the house and it's just my husband and I. And he's been very, very tolerant in allowing me to work on all sorts of SEG types of projects and problems and challenges, etc. As far as balancing career and family when I was younger, I have 2 children. They're now in their mid-30s. But certainly when they were young, there was a lot of juggling. And I guess what I would like to say is that there's never really a perfect balance. There is no such thing. However, for me, what made it easy was that it was really important for me to work. I really needed to work to feel fulfilled. I needed to be engaged. I needed to be intellectually challenged. So the reason for working was very important, which meant that, well, first of all, I tried to get a lot of help. So if someone volunteered to help, I said, yes, thank you. And as soon as we could afford it, we got a cleaning lady. So there are things like that you can make things happen, make things work. Again, I don't think there is something like a perfect balance, but you have to decide what is acceptable to you. For me, I was very, very lucky that I had a husband that knew that work was very important to me, that my career was important. So I had a partner that always helped out, and that made a huge difference. But there were certainly times when my children would say, oh, we need cupcakes for school tomorrow. And the truth is, what I did then was I went out and bought cupcakes. And I tried to get my children to help me pick out the cupcakes so that at least they knew that I was trying to be on their side, so to speak. But there were many times when there were other moms that helped with my children, whether it was field camps or days in school, etc. And I knew I just couldn't be there. So my answer to that now is that this is the time when I'm giving back to other moms' children. And their children are now not 6 or 12 or 15. They are in their 20s and maybe 30s. And so now this is my time to give back to all those moms that helped my kids when they were young. So it looks different, but I think it's important also. So thank you. Yeah, so I was raised in Sweden, which is a small country. Swedish is, of course, my mother tongue. I actually came to the US quite early as an exchange student in high school, which is where I learned English, and then I came back for graduate school. When I think back on my undergraduate school in Sweden, and now the fact that I am president of SEG, I would never ever have dreamt that something like that could happen. And I hope that some of you that are watching me now get inspiration from that. You don't have to come from a large city from the US to really make it in the world of geophysics and geoscience. And yeah, you can do it too. So please just try. I think one of the things that helped me all throughout my career was I was always really curious. And I had a habit of raising my hand. And not only that, but I was also really good at filling out the applications. And I think that is one of the things that is so important, to raise your hand and fill out the application, even if you don't quite know if you have all the credentials to take a certain job or participate in a project and so on and so forth. And I think it's especially important for women because we often think that we need to know everything associated with a certain job before we can say, I'd like to do that. So be courageous and raise your hand even if you're nervous if you can actually do it or not. So I'm married to a wonderful, wonderful man, Dan. We've been married for 42 years. He's also a geophysicist. And really, before we even got married, he was very clear that my career was going to be important to me. And so from the very start, we approached our life, if you will, as a team. And we basically said that it's not just about my career or your career, it's about our careers. We had the opportunity to move a number of times. In fact, we started in Boston, went to Dallas, to Saudi Arabia, to Norway, New Orleans, Houston, and then back to Boston. And in all these moves, we actually had two positions. We had two jobs to go to, which in hindsight seems rather remarkable. However, what I need to confess is that the jobs weren't always perfect for both of us. It usually meant a promotion or a real exciting opportunity for one of us, and then the other one would sort of take a job that might not be perfect, but it was sort of our career path as a team. And to me, one of the interesting things was I took several jobs that didn't sound optimum, and yet somehow they became fantastic jobs. And what happened usually was that you, of course, when you start a new job, you try to do exactly what they expect and fulfill what you're supposed to do. But once you're comfortable with that, again, it was that raised hand. You know, I can help with this. Let me help you. Can I try this? And so I think that's a way to, when you're in a dual career situation, if you don't have the perfect job, or your husband doesn't have, or your partner doesn't have a perfect job, kind of work on making it the perfect job. And it might take a year or two, but I think it's a really, really good idea. So that's one of my pieces of advice. I've been I've had a long career, shall we say, and I can't say that there were specific people, actually. To me, it was more like sort of a 5-year plan, maybe, and the 5-year plan never looked like we thought it would look like. But I think for me, the way we went about it was my husband and I talked frequently about what if you are offered to go to Norway, or what if such and such happened. And then when the question came, it could be different, but we already had discussed what was important. And I think I should say, when I was pregnant, and until our youngest, we have 2 children, until he was 2 years old, which was about the period of 5 years, my career was basically flat. I didn't have the time and energy, if you will, to put in more than I would normally do. And so during those 5 years, my husband basically had the dominant career, and whenever he had an opportunity, I followed. And again, there was always a job, but it wasn't that sort of fantastic job. So then when our son was 2 years old, I had an opportunity that was really exciting, and my husband said, okay, it's your turn. I'm coming with you. So, which was really, really wonderful, because then I had an opportunity to get moving and get excited and really show what I could do. So I think I hope many of you will have the opportunity to have a partner and a team kind of career, because it's so rewarding, and it's so rewarding to have a family if you have the privilege to have children. I would never, I hope that many of you have that opportunity. It's just wonderful, and it can be crazy, but it's all worth it. Well, at this stage in my career, I really, really like the idea of hopefully being inspirational to younger women, or mid-career women for that it's really important to me that women have role models, that they can see that even if you come from a small country like Sweden, you can become president of SEG, and to make young women really understand that there are lots of opportunities. Having said that, it's still difficult sometimes to be a woman in this world. And I really believe that it's important to network, to work together, to not be discouraged, but talk to other women, whether they are mentors or whether they are peers, to see what they would do or how they react in different situations. We're really, really strong when we work together. We have, of course, the Women's Network Committee at SEG. I was actually one of the initial participants in that, which I'm very proud of, and I'm really, really excited where the Women's Network Committee has come. After it started, the way we started was really to look at things like how can we promote women for awards. When we looked back, there were really, really very few women that had ever gotten an SEG award. And so all of a sudden we got together and we basically wrote letters of recommendation, etc. And if you look at the data from the last 10 or 12 years since we started, the number of women that gotten awards have really increased. Another thing we did was we started nominating women for different committees and different boards. And one of the reasons I'm here as president of SEG today is because of the Women's Network Committee, because they kept putting my name in. And on that note, I think it's good for you to hear that I actually put my name in 3 times, and it wasn't until the 3rd time that I actually got elected as SEG president. And some people think that that was kind of crazy, but I think if it's something you really want to do, then don't be afraid to raise your hand again. And I can tell you that was one woman from the SEG Network Committee that when I was asked to run for the 3rd time, I called her and I said, well, what do you think? Is this crazy? You know, I've already done this twice. I lost twice. And she said, well, Anna, would you like to do it? And I said, yeah, I would like to be president of SEG. And she said, well, what would happen if you lost again? And I thought about it and I said, well, nothing. I live in Boston. I don't even have to see a bunch of Houston people, if you will, and I still have all my friends. And so she said, well, why don't you run then? And I did, and I was elected as SEG president. So I actually started studying oceanography in Sweden. And why did I study oceanography? Well, one was that actually my father said, Anna, you're really good at languages, you're really good at all these things. Why don't you study something that's sort of difficult and complicated while you have the teachers and while you're in college? And so I said, okay. And then oceanography just sounded really interesting because I knew there would be field trips and we'd be out on the water and do all these things. And then I basically continued on that end, and I started with the Woods Hole in the joint program between MIT and Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute, and had an opportunity to be out on research ships. I have about 6 months of time on different research vessels, and actually met my husband on one of them. We were out on a research vessel in the Persian Gulf, and I was a guest student investigator, which meant free room and board, but no pay. And my husband was in charge of the air guns. Very exciting. But anyways, then I ended up getting a master's, and it was really more in marine geophysics. And when I graduated in 1980, everyone was hiring. All the energy companies, and they wanted anyone that had any sort of math, science, what have you in their backgrounds. So I think I had 19 offers to interview with different companies. That's how incredible it was at that time. And my husband and I decided that we had just gotten married when I got my master's, and we decided that we wanted to work for the same company because we wanted to be transferred overseas. And at the time, most companies actually they couldn't handle a couple. And we ended up going with Mobil Oil, who did. And my husband started directly in the seismic processing group, and I started what was then called the geophysical training program, which was a 1-year program where you spent 3 months in seismic processing, 3 months in interpretation, 3 months in GravMag, and 3 months in the field. So by the time you finished that program, you really knew quite a bit about what you do in the energy industry as a geophysicist. The other fabulous thing was that you knew so many people in these different groups. So you had a network that you could ask questions, etc. Plus, I think there were 35 of us in this program. So you had a network of young professionals, and you had a network, you knew who to call in GravMag if you were looking at an exploration project in Colombia, for example, and there was some GravMag that you didn't understand. You had someone to go to.